Hello, my name is Dr. Ledia Kazazi, and I am a professor at the Department of Foreign Languages at the University of Elbasan Alexandru Giovanni in Albania. The actual presentation will focus on a feminist critical reading of Daisy Miller by Henry James from an intercultural perspective. I am a professor of American literature and teach the actual novel to third-year undergraduate students of English language and literature. A correct and full understanding of this work proves to be particularly difficult, mainly because of two reasons. The time of the writing, since this is a 19th century novel, and because of the different cultural settings evoked in the story. Daisy Miller is the work of Henry James, an American novelist and literary critic. Let me start with a critical commonplace. Few male writers of his time have devoted to women the sustained and coherent attention that Henry James displayed throughout his career. Most of James's novels have women protagonists, and even the few that do not, such as, for example, The Ambassadors, it features prominent women characters. James's attitude to the woman question, that is, the unequal balance of power between men and women, has been both a central and a controversial issue in James's criticism for over 2 decades. What is at stake is, of course, our possibility of reading, teaching, studying, and enjoying James with a clear conscience within a gender politically correct frame, whether we are female or male readers. But what is at stake is also, and perhaps more importantly from an intellectual and critical point of view, our understanding of the way James's works operate to convey their famous, ambiguous meanings, and to challenge or reinforce the ideological assumptions of his age and of our own. Daisy Miller is the story of Annie Miller, nicknamed Daisy, a young American woman on holiday in Europe. The protagonist is portrayed as a naive girl, left to carve her own way through European society and finally cruelly sacrificed by expatriated snobs with misogynistic double standards. Daisy is first and foremost an American girl, and the subject of the novella is the conflict that arises when she is let loose in an alien European surrounding. Both James's contemporaries and recent critics agree that in Daisy Miller, James has discovered nothing less than the American girl as a social phenomenon, a fact, and a type. In this, James develops the international theme of his earlier work, for instance in Roderick Hudson in 1875 and The American in 1877, where he specifically deals with the clash of cultures between America and Europe. Throughout the story, Daisy's morality is continuously judged by fellow Americans who have long resided in Europe by losing touch with the American character and identity. It is this judgment that mirrors the thematic structure of the novella. For example, the two settings, Vevey in Switzerland and Rome in Italy, are used to symbolize different systems of values. The American characters, Mrs. Costello and Mrs. Walker, who are very much associated with Switzerland, expatriate culture and social distinction, while Daisy conserves her innocence, a trait of the American character. The relation of culture to innocence also works on both technical and thematic levels of the novella, as James uses European monuments to frame dramatic moments of the story. The Colosseum, therefore, seems to become a symbol of reductive judgments made purely on the basis of appearance or manners. Even though she is the main character of the story, Daisy Miller is virtually without a voice of her own. The reader is offered no direct access to her consciousness apart from her acts and the few lines she speaks. On the other hand, she is under the constant scrutiny of a male reflector, constantly assessing her behavior according to a set of established norms and categories. The story thus unfolds as the records of Winterbourne's interpretative activity where he acts as the central intelligence, with Daisy as the object of both his speculation and his attempts at romance. This positioning is not simply a narrative arrangement, but a cultural one. In fact, it exactly reproduces the very structure of the 19th century gender system, with women as the passive and voiceless objects of men's authority, judgment, social power, and romantic initiative. Winterbourne is not just an individual here, he is the voice of the society, the representative of a gender ideology based on an asymmetrical distribution of roles. Winterbourne's obsessive labels and standards are not just his own. Gender ideology in the story straddles nation and class divides and becomes impersonal and pervasive. In the long run, the impersonal and disseminated power of ideology proves stronger than the individual will, just like the Roman fever that Daisy caught in the Colosseum, that eventually caused her death. Thus, Daisy Miller appears as a confrontation between a woman and the ideological gender system framing and constricting her. Daisy, while traditionally seen as the epitome of innocence, seemed to be marked by a constant refusal of conformity. The few words she speaks in the story disclose a self-aware, defiant heroine, as are the words which she says to Winterbourne in relation to his aunt not wanting to meet her, as based on the speculation surrounding her character. She says that she doesn't want to know me, being aware of the fact that the woman refuses to meet her, and then adding that he needn't be afraid because she herself is not afraid. Another very important statement in the story that suggests Daisy's resistance to the society is the assumption that she has never allowed a gentleman to date her or to interfere with anything that she does, which is very atypical of the young European girls of the 19th century. Towards the end of the story, when she is warned by Mrs. Walker to not go alone unattended by another gentleman, she accepts her behavior as improper and suggesting that Mrs. Walker has to give her up, thus stressing her freedom and her unique character. To conclude, we would say that the text embodies a certain cultural complexity, mainly due to the time of writing, but also to the main theme. As a result of this, it becomes difficult to teach in a cross-cultural setting. In these occasions, the student's attention needs to be shifted into a more contemporary perspective. A feminist critical reading helps to unveil the complex issues addressed by the novel by making it more approachable to the students of the 21st century. I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and in case you have any further questions or clarifications or any suggestions on how to improve the present work, please consider emailing me at my email address. Thank you.